All LCS teams for the NA and EU Summer Split Season 6 2016 have been released. And as usual, we've got the first, second, third team of All LCS. And there's a voting system behind how we come up with the player that fits each role. And this actually has to be one of the most egregious that I've ever seen in terms of once the actual votes were released. Because the difference from what happened this time from the past is that in the past, when we criticised the votes, we criticised who was voted onto the team itself and whom we might have voted, etc. And if you remember, last split, I made quite a big deal about talking to people and saying, I mean, you might notice that it was actually Deficio who released his votes. And I made the point that I'd love to see what other people's votes are. I think Jack might have released his votes. And the reason why I want to see people's votes was, for some positions, particularly in NA, there were some absolutely ridiculous ones where, like, for example, Hooney wasn't even a candidate for the MVP award. He wasn't even, like, second or third in the voting. Meanwhile, like, two of the people who were on his team were voted ahead of him. And many people think he was the best player. So not only were the actual outcome something we can disagree with, but we wanted to see what was the process here. Because if you say you took all the media and the broadcasting, all these people involved, well, then we're going to tar them and think, well, that guy's an idiot. What? You didn't vote for Hooney. You didn't think this guy was available in this sense. You voted for, in NA, famously last split, it was almost literally a joke where the first team on loads of positions was like the Immortals players who were in first place. Then the second team was the CLG players who were in second place. Then the third team was the C9 players who were in third place. It was a fucking joke how obvious it was that they just looked who finished top and said, oh, all their players must be first, second and third. So this time around, we've got a number of egregious scenarios as well. Not as many in the outcomes, and I'm not going to talk as much about the outcomes, actually. That's not really going to be something I'm going to discuss. I'm not going to tell you my outcomes either. That's something for a different video, because this video is about how fucked up the voting process was, and the fact that it made the voting become a joke, where it's a joke in terms of the role balance of you're just putting in like 3 or 4 players from the best team on the assumption that they must be the best if on the best team. Meanwhile, some superstar player from another team can't get in as a result because he wasn't on the best team. That's not how it works in other sports. It's a joke in terms of the bias to the best team in that sense. It's a joke in terms of people actually troll voting, purposely voting stupidly, or voting for their friends who are to be way better than they should be and way ahead of any consensus whatsoever just because they're friends with that person, or even worse, voting against people they don't like by refusing to put them up there, sometimes not even putting them on the ballot or putting them as third as if like almost as like a to spit in their face and be like, haha, look, even though you were the best player in your position, I'm going to put you third or not even on the ballot, fuck you. Like making actual mockery of the very concept of this system where you're supposed to just all objectively be trying to reward the best players, and then the consensus will give those people awards, and in history there will be a legacy that you can go back to this split, look at the All-LCS Awards, look at all this stuff, and see who the best were. Now, overall, luckily there's so many people polled, you're probably going to be able to. But even so, when you look at some of these ballots, you're going to see what a fucking joke some of these votes were, and what a disgrace this was, and how this process cannot be allowed to be repeated for these very reasons, these abuses that you will see as I go through them. So first and foremost, before I get to all the corrupt voting and all the players and coaches who are pieces of shit and don't respect the process whatsoever, I'll just tease you with that for now. I want to talk first of all about the fact that we're in a situation where you go and look who won, and this is one area where I will discuss who won because it's reflected in the voting as well. If you go and look for NA, then I'll show you who it is. Well, I won't be able to show you, but I'll tell you who it is. So for NA, the all first team was Hauntzer, Rainover, Bjergsen, Doublelift, Biofrost. So every player except the jungler, Rainover, is from TSM, and obviously TSM had a fantastic split, and TSM won 17 out of 18 games. But there's only one player out of the top 5 players there who isn't from TSM, and that's Rainover. Now his team, well, it's not like they had a bad split, they won 16 out of 18 games. What, but they only had one player who was the best in their role? What's more, that's just not the way that it works in any other sport. I mean, consider this, okay? Just think about this for a second. What are the odds that TSM had 4 of the 5 best players? I mean, even if you had the best players, I wouldn't necessarily make the best team. That's why it doesn't work for this type of award. Have you ever noticed how when they've published the all-NBA teams, similar to this, first, second, and third in the NBA, by position, have you ever noticed how This last season, the Warriors, okay, broke the record for individual wins in a season. They won 73 games, most in history. The most before that was the 95-96 Bulls, who won 72. Have you noticed how for those 2 years, you can go on basketball-reference.com and look up the all-first team NBA, all-NBA first teams, and you will not find for those years, even though these teams won the most games ever, you will not find the all-first team is like all players from their teams. In fact, you go and look, and I think this year there was one player. I think it was just Steph Curry was on there. I think for the Bulls, it might have been just one player. It might have been just Michael Jordan. Maybe Pippen got on there as well. I'd have to check, but I think just one player. Because they did it in a reasonable manner. They didn't think themselves, well, they're the best team or won their most games, therefore they must have all the best players. That's ridiculous, isn't it? Michael Jordan was the best at his position. Was Scottie Pippen the best at his position? No, probably not. Karl Malone was probably the best if I had to guess what they picked for that instead. For forward. Yeah, that's literally what people have done in the fucking LCS. That's literally what they've done. That just makes League of Legends esports look so whack. I don't mean the site, by the way. I mean esports, as in the competitive side of League of Legends. That this is who everyone's voting for. Almost everyone from the best team. And what's more, it's not even like they were 17-1, like Fnatic 18-0. And then the second team was like 11-7 or whatever. I don't even know if that's possible, actually. Whatever, 13-5. No, the second team won one less game and they only got one fucking player could even be in there. What kind of world is this? What? So the second team had only one of the 5 best players in the whole LCS. The first team had 4 of them, and yet the second team won one less game. Well, they must be the fucking coach of the season. They must have every other quality that makes you the best team except the best players, right? This is so whack. What's more, in LCS, you only have fucking 10 teams. In the NBA, you have, like, what is it? I'd have to check. Is it like 28 or something? 24? I'll double check now. Way more. I mean, I guess it's beside the point, really, isn't it? But I'll have a look anyway. Is it 24? It's worth checking. Actually, you have 30 teams in the NBA. You only have fucking 10 in NALCS. So actually, talent, if anything, is more condensed down. Therefore, it's less likely that there's some super good player with no good players around him at the bottom. And so, if someone's even in the middle of the pack, in theory, why can't he be a first all-team, all-LCS team player? I mean, it just doesn't work that way. The whole reason why in the NBA and then the NHL and all the others that they do this for, all teams, the reason why you very rarely get like 3 or 4 players from one team is because they understand, they are reasonable enough to realise that like the guy who's the best forward in the fucking NHL doesn't have to even be on a top 4 team, but he could have performed as the best. The guy who's the best jungler in League of Legends doesn't have to have been on the best team who won the most games. The guy who's the best support player in LCS doesn't have to even be on a top 2 team to have been the best support player. It doesn't follow that because they won all the games it's that way. One of the things that really pisses me off about that is that in League of Legends especially, it's like the NBA. You vote it by position. So in the NBA, they don't differentiate between forwards there. It's just 2 forwards and 2 guards. It's not shooting guard, point guard. But it's 2 guards, it's 2 forwards, it's a center position. Likewise, in League of Legends, it's just the 5 roles. So even more so, when you have only one for each of the 5 roles, you have to be even more reasonable when giving these awards out. I mean, imagine this season that we had the NBA work out like it did in the LCS. What would have happened was the Warriors won 73 games, so people would have voted in Harrison Barnes or Draymond Green over LeBron James. Now, LeBron James might be the best player in the whole NBA. He's at very least probably a top 3, top 4 player in the whole NBA. But he might not have got voted in because he voted in the best forwards for the Warriors, and he plays forward position. Now listen, both of those guys did a good job for their team, Green in particular, but they weren't as good as LeBron James. Definitely not as an overall player. Now that's the key thing as well. We're not voting them in by position relative to their team. We're voting them in overall player at that position. So okay, let's go ahead and say, you know what? Maybe Hortzer was the best player, or Biofrost was the best player for his team at that position. That's why they succeeded. But was he the best top or support player in the entire LCS this split? Ignoring who won the fucking game. You don't look at who won the game. You look at how they performed and how they performed overall. Were they? Doesn't just follow automatically. You have to actually ask that question and give good reasons as to why. By the LCS logic, Draymond Green must be a better forward than LeBron James. That is literally what these awards show us and how people voted and how, if you look at how real sports works. I always say this, and I want to just reiterate it here. if you are a role player, people always say, role players are so undervalued and so hard done by. They don't get any credit. No, they don't get the most credit, mate. And that's how it should be. If you're a role player, you're someone who plays your role and you do a good job in the context of your team and sacrificing and giving your team what it needs, and you get to win or you get a top placing, guess what? That is your reward. Because as an individual player, if you had to be the star carry of the whole team and have the whole team based on you, you probably wouldn't place as highly. So your reward, your success, is to get team success, because that's what you're playing for, the team. That is, your accomplishments are your success. So you can say, I was a champion one day. Well, that doesn't mean you were the best player at your position, but you get to say you're a champion and no one can argue about it. You are a champion. Awards are for individual players, because that way, even if someone is the best player by far on the whole league at his position, but he doesn't have the right team around him, doesn't have a good GM, teammate left, injury maybe, he can still get rewarded for being the best player. Awards are for individual players. They are for solo stars. They are for star players. They are for carries. I don't mean carry in terms of AD carry, mid, top. You can be a jungler as well if you're some beast carry like Spirit was in LPL, etc. Now, let's be real. I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now, and I don't care who gets mad at it. TSM did not have 4 of the 5 best players in NALCS. Get fucking real. I mean, look throughout history, you'll see that this just never happens. This is absolutely ridiculous. When this happened with SK Telecom in 2013, when they thought they were the best team of all time, I might even agree. I even said then, this is ridiculous that they've given 4 out of 5 players the best role in the entire, at the time, OGN, and no one else is allowed even a look in, even if they were the best jungler, like fucking Dandy or something. Get up my face. So, one of the problems here, I'll nail some positions down for you. So if I'm going to say they don't have 4 of the 5 best players, I've got to remove some players, haven't I? So I'll go ahead and give you some names. I don't give a fuck. Now let's start off with the support player, Biofrost. Now, people voted him in as the support player for reasons that we'll get to in a second, because they'll say stuff like, oh, well, he was on the best team. Oh, well, he did help double lift. Oh, well, he did work well with the team roaming. And so. None of that matters. We're asking, in an award system, which, by the way, is not supposed to be working based on results. I realised there was the play of the game shit and all that gets involved for MVP. But we're asking, who is the best support in this split of the LCS? Who performed the best? Was it Biofrost? If it was, then I think you should listen to the section later on in this video where I'll outline that League of Legends as a game is mad inherently biased to the teams that are winning in a match to make everyone's stats look better and make you look better as a result and make things easier for the lesser players in your team. If you really thought he was the best support player, sure, you can think it, you can have that opinion, you can make your case for it, but I think to automatically assume it, as many people seem to have, is, in my opinion, ridiculous. The one I'd really go in for is Hortzer as a top laner. Because here's the thing, I think you can certainly make the case that he was one of the best top laners, and you can outline your reasons as to why he was. But as I've explained with my criteria here, that accomplishments are the reward for role players, awards are for star players, I think the best top laner should be a player who's one of the primary carries on his team. The team's in some sense built around him. The team succeeds as a result of his incredible performances. Not just because of his performances. Don't take what I said out of context. It's because of his performances primarily. Not his performances contributing into the whole team collective or contributing to other bigger performances in his team, which are the main motivators for winning. But this is how the best top player should be decided. That's why Karl Malone can be our all-NBA first team forward, even if his team does not finish top 2 in their conference. Even if his team was not ever going to win the NBA title. That's why he can be the best, because he is better than the forward of a team that was on those 2 teams, who might have done a great job within the context. There might be some, like... there might obviously be some fantastic player who's the 3rd best option for that team, who does great for his team, but doesn't overall win. So here's the thing. To me, if you think Hortzer is the best top laner in NLCS, you've missed the point of these awards. You've missed the point of that term, best. Because, think about it, in LCK, when Duke was on Najin, he was the best top laner. I actually agree with that. I thought he was a fucking monster. I thought you could make a case for Smeb as well. He also was a player the team was based on. Someday right out there. Never thought it was Marion, by the way, who was on the best team at the time, who won overall. Not the best team for the whole split, but they won the split. Because these guys were the primary focus. They were absolutely incredible at their role. And Duke actually was amazing, even on a team that wasn't even top 3, wasn't even top 4. Now that Duke plays for SK Telecom, I don't think he's even a candidate for best top laner. And the reason why is, even when he plays well, He's not even the primary carry. He's not even the secondary carry. He's the third carry. He comes after Faker and Bang. He's not even that good within the team context. And unfortunately, his team plays that team fight style, don't they? They don't play around feeding the top laner KT style. Or in Najin didn't do it as much. He was just incredible on his own. But in theory, teams are more based around him there. So as a result, he now gets to have what I said before. He now gets to have all the accomplishments, right? He gets to win LCK, gets to win MSI, gets to win IM. Congrats to you. You might get to win Worlds as well. And one day you can say, I'm a world champion. But you know what? You don't get the individual award because you weren't even the best individual on your fucking team. And yet you're getting this individual award as the third best player. Not going to happen, mate. So as a result, similar in SK Telecom 2013, Impact was not the best top laner. Now, he didn't win the award that year. Flame actually won that award. He was like the 4th or 5th best player on that team. And you're going to give him the best top laner just because he plays with all the best and actually wins as a result. Now, he gets credit for winning, but he's not the best individual player. That's ridiculous. Now, the key thing about someone like Hauntzer is he is playing a supportive role within the team. Yes, he plays a carry, but guess what? Part of a lot of the carries nowadays, the reason why you don't see as many top lane carries, unless the team is just based around them entirely, is because if your team isn't based around the top lane carry, if you have a beast mid laner and or AD carry, odds are you're oftentimes going to have your top laner most of the game be going on tanks, etc. And you're going to have him in situations where his job is to come into the fight and have an impact in the fight and zone for people. I have a really bad cold. There's nothing I can do about it. And teleport around the map, etc. This is not the same as being the best player at that position. Now, if you want to just fuck with everyone and redefine that role as well, that's the new job of that role. But it isn't, is it? That is within certain teams in the meta. Other teams in the meta can be successful like KT was, like Rocks have, with a superstar top laner, who is by far the best player, even though he plays within that same context. That's why he gets that fucking award, because he's the best player. If Hauntzer wants to be the best top laner, I'll tell you how he can do it next split. Right, he needs to either get TSM to rework the whole team, so he's a primary or secondary carry, or base the team around him, base the team around getting him fed, or go to another team where that happens. If he's the primary carry on a worse team and has the room and the resources to shine, or is just given the room and the resources by TSM, made the primary carry and is the best player, you know what? I'd give him the award as well. I'd say, well done. You're the best player. You know what? What's incredible is you played in a team with Bjergsen and Doublelift, and they gave you all the resources and you carried the game. You're the actual primary carry. You're playing as a main focus point. Oh, wait a second. You're just helping those guys be the best player. Then you're not the best player. That's the way it works. That's the way individual awards work. What's the point in giving the guy the team award, the accomplishments, the success, and then the fucking individual award as well? What's that saying to the guy who's actually the best player on the team that's not as good? Fuck you, mate. You better get some better teammates. It's an individual award. It's not a team award. What the fuck is this? Now, here's the point I want to make. Hauntzer might be the best top laner in the context of what he can do for TSM to help TSM win. That's not what this award's about. It's about best top laner. It doesn't make sense for him to be the best top laner in the league while also playing with the, in my opinion, by far the best mid and AD carry in the league. That's ridiculous. Doesn't work. One of those three can't be true. Possibly two of those three. People using logic like they will for Biofrost, like, yes, but as a rookie, he did so well under pressure and playing for a top team and with a player who's very difficult to handle like Doublet. None of that's relevant, mate. None of that has anything to do with an individual award. That's a storyline. That's a cool movie script. That's not about who's the best player in the league. You don't seem to understand even the premise of the award. It's not about storylines. It's not about specific things that are outside of the team and what a great teammate he was and how well he did to encourage people and all the rest of it. And he was playing Pachisi with him one day and what a great guy, and he cooked him fucking cookies. Doesn't matter. It's asking who's the best player at that position in the league, this split. And if he doesn't qualify for that, then he doesn't qualify. And if he qualifies, why are you giving me reasons like that? Why not tell me based on his fucking play why he's the best? You don't win the MVP. This isn't the MVP, but let's imagine it's the MVP of the role, by being awesome for a rookie. They're never for a rookie. You win the MVP if you're the best player that season in terms of performing. It's nothing to do with any other circumstances. Played for the worst team, was the best player. None of that matters. It's just who was the best player. Now, I will say, I will give people a little bit of leeway in as much as I myself often have difficulty establishing who the best players are. I don't think it's certain. That's why I made that whole video. It'll be up there about debating the MVP. I don't think it's as easy, I especially don't think in League of Legends compared to other sports it's as easy even to say who the best is, but I think you can always make the case for positions like this as to who the best is, and you'll all have different criteria. With that said, I want to make this point. To me, League of Legends, I mean Dota as well to a degree, but at least in Dota you can still farm the carry sometimes if you're behind. Dota, because of how it works with levels affecting stats, etc. Jesus Christ. And the further you get ahead, meaning that, levels affecting abilities, and the further you get ahead, meaning that you get items, which you translate that gold lead into literal items that give you stats, because of this, and then the nature of winning a game compared to someone else in the snowball factor, League of Legends will probably always be one of the most whack esports in terms of team esports for figuring out and giving actual credit to people. Because unfortunately, the game itself makes the winning team within one match look too good across the board. The outcome affects the score, as in who wins the game, affects the scoreboard way too heavily. I mean, the problem is, the scores aren't even a metric in League of Legends, a good metric, to determine who the best players are. And they definitely don't come close to determining who the best performers are in a match. Because you end up with scenarios where the guy on the best team who's playing a role might have a much better score, much better stats overall, yet the guy who's actually the better performing player within the context of the isolated, the whole game, but him isolated, not just his team's approach, might have way worse stats because he has to die more and he has to put himself in situations where he doesn't get a sicker KDA. So what a terrible score metric KDA is to determine who the best are. So the big problem that you have is it gets even more skewed when a team is very dominant. When a team is very dominant, imagine if we did the same in basketball as we happen in League of Legends. So the basketball game works like a League of Legends match works. So when the Warriors or the Bulls were dominating offensively, first of all, that doesn't stop the other team from having a dominant offense themselves. That's based on a separate aspect. Defense. That doesn't work the same way in League of Legends. It doesn't have that separate side to it like that. You don't pass the ball back to each other, take turns having the fucking scoring. That doesn't exist. If you're winning, you're just scoring all day long and he's doing fuck all. You're actually inhibiting his offense by yourself being good offensively. As a result, he can't get the stats that he needs, because offense is what causes the stats in League of Legends, to look good stats-wise. Whereas the whole point in the NBA is you can lose the game. I remember there was a game, where the Lakers lost to the Wizards in overtime. I think it was in December of 2006, and Gilbert Arenas, sadly now departed from the NBA, was at the time a fantastic shooting guard. And he scored 60 points in overtime, over overtime as well. What people might not remember is Kobe Bryant scored 45 points in that game and had a very good game in terms of shooting percentage. So, Gilbert Arenas was the best player in that game, but it was actually pretty clear that Kobe Bryant was the second best player in that game, yet his team lost the game. It wasn't that like Kobe Bryant was like the seventh best player, you've got to put in all of the other players first, then you've got to get to Kobe's... No, it was actually obvious because the game allowed you to see that even on the box score. Or at least indicated as much. There's nothing I can do about this. Now, the point is here, imagine that basketball was like League of Legends. So when you now dominate offensively, you shut down their offense entirely and they don't have an offense. Now what's more, because of the way the levels and items work, as the Warriors dominate a game and do well in a game, now all of a sudden, even the fourth best Warriors player becomes 40% bigger than the rest, so he has an advantage. He becomes 40% stronger than the rest. He becomes 40% faster than the rest as his team snowballs the game. Now making it easier for him to score points, and now making it so that he can dominate players that are much better than him in an individual context. And as a result, even he ends up with better stats and better numbers and more skewed numbers than the best players on the other team. Now, as I said before, I will concede that this team nature of it makes it hard to judge. That's why I want super experts to make these decisions, not just general people, especially in League of Legends. Because in Counter-Strike, we have it a bit like we have in League of Legends, in NBA. Like in Counter-Strike, we can still see how good someone is even when this team loses. And someone like Nico or Olaf Meister or Kenny S in the past could go totally ham even when their team loses and actually be the best player in the whole server. And you could see even though their team lost to a great team effort from the opposition. Now, in theory, we don't run into those problems in Counter-Strike, but unfortunately, the nature of the game in League of Legends means they will always exist. That's why we need more experts who understand the nuance of the game to give us information more, rather than using all the fallacies and all the skewed models that I described before. So, personally, I actually think in this sentence, because of the nature of the game, I even would suggest as a potential alternative, maybe they should even scrap positional voting. Maybe this should just be the 5 best players in the LCS. Because at least that way, the game does usually show some bias to the carries at least. So at least a carry in a game lost can still have good stats, etc. And therefore, at least we'd get other players than TSM in this scenario, or Immortals, allowed to be voted in, because they really could still be the best. Like, we could have the third best AD carry get voted in. Whereas right now, we don't even have that option. And we're not even getting the next best jungler in anyway. We're just getting a scenario where it's all TSM at the moment. And was all the Immortals last time. And was all Fnatic in Europe. So now let's look at how the voting is done. Because once I tell you how the voting is done, we're going to just look at the system, which is very flawed. And then see the outcomes of the system, which are super flawed and are actually a fucking disgrace. And I'm going to ream some people. So there's a panel that does voting. This split, as far as I know, it wasn't this way all the time. I'm not sure. I'm not actually certain as far as that goes, as to how it works. Because they said they asked some teams last time or something, but I think Forgiven said he wasn't asked or something. So there's a panel of people who vote. 4 different categories. There's the broadcast team, and there are 10 to 15 ballots there. This is for each region. There's the player reps, and there's 1 player rep for each team, and he has actually decided, and he has to represent all of his team's votes. So it's not just to be put on him, as I've actually learned. Luckily, I tweeted about this stuff, so I figured that out. I had read it anyway, but it's easy to forget all the minutiae of the points and the fine print, as it were. So there's a player rep, 1 per team, so there's 10 ballots there. There's a coach rep, representing all the coaching staff of that team, 10 ballots there. And there's third-party media, 10 to 15 ballots there. So if they had the maximum ballots, broadcast and media could make up 30 ballots, and player and coach, each from the same team, could make up 20 ballots total for all the teams involved. So there's a minimum of 40 ballots and a maximum of 50 ballots. Now, first and foremost, before we get into it, that system there where you have broadcast, as in casters, hosts, players, coaches, and third-party media. Now, I make the point that in traditional sports, only one of these categories votes for the MVP, traditional media, third-party media. In the NBA, the MVP award or first team is voted for by the media, by people who have media accreditation. Likewise, in the NFL, in the NHL, it's voted for by the media. Now, personally, I think the media is one of the only groups who should be allowed to vote. I think they're the ones who don't have as many obvious biases and ties to people. They're the ones, in theory, who are watching more of a wide spread of the games in many senses and don't have to answer to the fans in the same way the broadcasters do, etc., and won't have the natural biases players and coaches do. So even though there's some whack media out there, and some of the media on these panels were fucking whack and should never even be asked for their opinions, even so, as a general process, I thought it was much better that way. And you'll see by the outcome, I think it was much more reasonable what they voted for. So personally, I would say media is one group that you should ask for. If I was to pick my group, I'd pick a team of experts. So I'd have people, for example, I'd have like Monte Cristos, etc. It depends what region, obviously, if they watch the region. I'd have Kelsey Moser, I'd have people like this. Yeah, these are media, but they're also key experts. That's the key. I'd even have some casters in there who I know will be unbiased, like a Deficio. I don't know about someone like Crepo because I feel like he's actually someone who sometimes worries too much about what the public think, but in theory, I think in general he'd do some good votes there and wouldn't be as biased, etc. So I'd have a team of experts myself, but I understand people are going to complain about that, even though I've went over this a million times in MVP voting and rankings, that experts' votes will still be closer to a reasonable opinion than randoms will. And yet you'll go, yeah, but they can be biased as well. Yeah, and so can everyone else, as I'm going to now explain this point. Broadcast team, I don't know why the fuck they're involved. Player reps, are you having a fucking laugh letting players vote? Coach reps, are you out of your mind? You'll now find out how ridiculous this is. Because if you want to talk about players, let's start with players, okay? Pro players, they were allowed to vote. First of all, pro players, I can tell you this, I've had 15 years now, maybe even 16, of being around pro players in many games. And especially in team games, where unfortunately this is what's happening here, there is a ridiculous level of bias in both directions for pro players. They will be biased against people they don't like. I've had players, unfortunately, I won't tell you the names of the players, but I'll just tell you that there was players in League of Legends, in all these games, who when I talk to them in private, none of them hold the consensus, by the way, on who the best players are. And the reason why almost none of them do, except the very, very reasonable, rare ones, is because nearly all pro players have other players who are very good that they don't like. And so they'll purposely downplay that guy. And they'll go, in fact, some of them will say, you know what, he's shit. And even though this guy's a fantastic player, they'll go, he's shit, and I think he's greedy, and he's an asshole to his teammates. None of this relevant, by the way. He's a fantastic player. They'll refuse to even acknowledge any of that. They'll go, and he disrespected me once, and I'm better than him, therefore he's total shit, and he couldn't even never stand before me. They'll be biased against people they don't like. Even worse, they'll be biased in favour of people they do like. So they'll actually say that this guy, who might be the 9th best support, I think he's pretty good, I think he's underrated, I think he could be like the 3rd best support, just on the basis they're friends with him, just on the basis they like him, on the basis that guy's nice to them, and therefore they play with him on a regular basis, they duo queue with him, therefore they want to boost his confidence. This isn't what this award is about. This award is about competitive integrity. It's about creating a legacy of who the best performing players were, so that we can see this in years to come, and the history has a record of who these people were, and giving these awards out rightfully, not just giving them out on mad biases. And players in general will be ridiculous when it comes to this. As you'll see with some of the examples I'll give, you'll be amazed at the level of corruption in some of these examples. Also, players will vote on stupid stuff that doesn't have anything even to do with the matches in LCS. They'll vote on scrims. Oh, in scrims, that guy was insane. Or they'll vote on prestige. That guy's a legend. How can you say he's not there? I'm not talking about legends, mate. I'm not talking about years past. I'm talking about how do they perform in this fucking split, you idiot. Then, there's also a trend, especially in League of Legends, where people, because they lose to a guy, sometimes, as long as that guy isn't disrespecting, they'll just think, oh, he must be the best then. And so, famously, this happened with Bengi, where people used to say Bengi was better than Dandy, just on the basis SK Telecom won everything. Now, then there was Fnatic Summer 2015, where they said every player in every role was the best, just because they won all the games. I mean, what the fuck is that? So, even worse than that, there's another detail that you're probably not even going to believe when I say this. They allowed players to vote for themselves and their teammates. Themselves, even. They could put themselves, if I'm a jungler, if I'm Meteos, I could put myself first team or all LCS jungler. Haha, nothing you can do about it. I did that. That's fucking insane. Why would you ever allow that? Why would you ever allow them to vote for their teammates? That's going to lead to even worse bias, as we saw when this happened. What you should do instead is, one thing you should definitely not allow is them to vote for themselves or their teammates. Now that's going to mean one less vote and one less set of votes for their team overall. But since every team's going to be denied, that's going to be one less for everyone. It's going to overall even up. Sure, if someone's the best and he's on your team, it's sad that you can't vote for him, but it takes away this corruption. And overall, in general, it's very rarely going to be the case that will deny the right player winning. But leaving it open to everyone, where everyone can vote their own team in and themselves in, now you're going to open the corruption, so it's way less likely that the right player wins overall. Finally, not only is there bias, not only is there people doing things ridiculous like voting for themselves and their teammates, but people actually, no joke, purposely trolled, fucked around and voted people they know aren't the best just for a joke or just to fuck with the award system. Despite the fact this is about competitive integrity, this is about legacy, it's about respect for the game and awarding the good players with the kind of recognition that they deserve. And yet pro players and coaches fucked with people like this. And I'm going to call these guys out directly. So, okay, one thing to consider, first of all, remember these guys were representatives. So in theory, it could be their team overruling them. But since their name's on the ballot and they submitted the ballot, I'm just going to have to say the player because I don't know who from their team decided it. But let's imagine it's the whole team doing this, but I'm going to have to say the name of the player. So here we go for some potential trolls. Some of them are more questionable, okay? Some of them could be a real vote. I suspect not. So OQ, AD carry of NRG, voted for Ray, a Korean player, as the best top laner in LCS. Now, to a degree I can understand, at least he did play a carry style, so in the Hotza sense it made sense. The fact that he's a Korean, the fact that almost no one else voted for him, makes me suspect that this was either biased to a friend, a Korean for example, or fuckery. I think probably biased to a friend, or, and maybe his team, at least in theory, shouldn't have trolled as much. But he's also voted for Fabi as the second best AD carry of the split, as though that's reasonable, and then this is a joke. He voted for his own top laner, Quaz, as the third best top laner in LCS. Now, Quaz had some fucking terrible games this split, was absolutely appalling at times, and there's no universe in which he was a top 3 player, and that just strikes to me of instant bias there, where you've just ruined a vote right there. Okay, or whoever for NRG voted that way. Now, Gate, he was the representative of Phoenix 1. You're going to be amazed, by the way, that, remember, there's one representative for each team. You'd be amazed how much bias and how many bullshit there is. And that's not even the worst. It's going to get way worse than that, especially when we get to Europe, guys. Buckle the fuck in for Europe. So, Gate, support player of Phoenix 1, P1. He voted, or at least his team did, for Inori, his teammate, as the best jungler in NALCS this split. So, okay, another trend that occurred was Koreans, so Seraph, top laner and representative of Envious, and Miracle, who's actually the coach, there was an interesting trend there where they seemed to vote for Koreans a lot higher and more often than others did. For example, the key example that I'm thinking of here is they both voted Ninja as the second mid laner. Very rarely he was ever mentioned elsewhere. Almost like Seraph plays with the guy and the other guy is friends with him. Oh goody, what is this? Fucking obvious bias ruining the voting. Who he? technically Korean, but like French or whatever, mid laner of CLG, representative of CLG, voted for Shrimp, Korean player, second best jungler in LCS. Now, Meteos, here's the thing. Some of these might not have been trolls. Maybe they could make arguments for some of them. But when I bring these ones up here, there's some fuckery going on right here. And I want to know about this. So, there's no way all of these can be legit votes. I think Meteos fucking trolled on purpose and actually ruined this and was an asshole with how he voted here. Because he voted for Fabi, the best AD carry. He voted Froggen, best mid lane. He voted Piglet, second best AD carry. He voted Doublelift, only the third best AD carry. Now, Fabi and Piglet both played for Team Liquid. Now, Piglet's not even in the fucking LCS anymore, didn't play most of the games, yet he voted him ahead of Doublelift, so he's taken away Doublelift's chance to get credit and recognition. Hasn't overall, obviously, because the result may end up not being the case, but he did his part to try and fuck with Doublelift's legacy there, and this is fine, is it, just for him to troll like that? Now, this is going to be great, because some of the European ones now are going to actually shock you with how pathetic these votes are. So Odo Amne, who again claims his whole team were the ones who forced him to do this, Odo Amne has his entire team, including himself, as the best players at their positions in EU-LCS, in first team EU-LCS. They even voted for Given as the second team All-LCS AD carry, barely played any games, but obviously plays for their team as the sub and now is entering. They even voted that guy. So they not only trolled with their picks, but they then even fucked someone else out of an AD carry vote that might need that vote at the end of the season that doesn't get it now because they even put their sub in there just to fuck with everyone. Now, Vizicachi of Unicorns of Love. Oh, Odo Amne's from HQK, by the way. Let's make sure we nail all the fucking teams as well as the people, shall we? Vizicachi, Unicorns of Love, did the same. He put himself and his entire team all first team LCS. And not only that, it's one thing if you do the biased vote for yourself and troll and put yourselves there. If you at least do the other votes for second and third correctly, you're still going to have deprived someone of a vote if you shouldn't have been there. But at least two of them will be vaguely correct. Not really, because you can't be the best. But at least you'll be giving points to someone else, right? No. He didn't put Trick or Perks, jungler and mid laner of G2, some of the best players in the league, even top 3 at their roles in any of the 3 teams. He denied those guys, or his team denied those guys any vote points whatsoever. Nukeduck, mid laner of Vitality, put himself and Cabashard on the first team. No one else in the league did, aside from people from Vitality. No one else in the entire league had Nukeduck first mid, that's for sure. He wasn't even on most people's ballots. Now, if they're going to troll like this, it ruins the historical aspect of the legacy around these awards. That's so fucked up. That's the players. Let's keep going. Broadcast. Now, first and foremost, I'm going to say it. I don't care who this offends. I don't give a fuck. They allowed broadcast. They gave an equal vote as goes to a player representative or a coach representative or a media representative to the fucking hosts of EU and NLCS. Dash and Shocks got an equal vote. Now here's the thing. Maybe you could make a case with how much LCS Shocks has watched, and she at least has a history of being half decent at the game, and she knows a lot of the players, etc. Maybe you could make a case that if you make an expert panel, she would be on there. Personally, she wouldn't be on mine, but whatever. I don't think it's a big deal to say that someone's not a fucking expert about the league. But why are these guys being given votes just on the basis that they're the host? The host isn't even a role that's about expertise at the game and being an expert and knowing who's the best. So I don't care. Yeah, I said it. Why the fuck have these guys got votes in this that are equal and can cancel out or overrule the votes of someone else by voting for stupid shit? Now, in this case, they didn't particularly, but I'm still just going to say it outright there. Likewise, play-by-play commentators. Play-by-play is not a role that necessarily has to be an expert, but you automatically get a vote if you want it. Rivington, etc. gets a vote. Is Rivington as knowledgeable as Deficio? I think almost no one would say he is. Yet he gets an equal say as Deficio in this sort of a voting system. What makes these people experts? I agree, they do their job, they're around the league, some of them are the best at what they do in their job. They're not the expert role though, they shouldn't be involved. Speaking of trolling, I think there was even trolling from the fucking broadcast people. Why did Optimus Tom, who was listed as like a stats person, remember that fuck who used to do casting back in the day, voted for Lolo as the first team All-LCS top laner. One of the only people in all of this ballot who did it. Was that legitimately? Is he friends with Lolo? Is there some bias there? Is he trolling? What's going on here? Why has he suddenly got this mad idea that Lolo's the best top laner in that sense? Now then, let's go to coaches. Oh, I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. It's weird that even the broadcast person might troll their players. Okay, some of them are assholes. They're very mature. No way the coaches trolled, right? No way the coaches abused and fucked with their voting and made a mockery of this process. Oh no, get ready, guys. You're not going to believe the list of coaches I've got for you here. So, okay. Heaven Time, coach of Echo Fox, voted for Shrimp as the best jungler in NALCS this split. Koreans, by the way, I think. Miracle, coach of Envious, voted for 4 out of the 5 players from his team, Envious, as the best in their roles in LCS, all LCS first team, everyone except Ninja. By the way, as a side joke, wow, he must be, shows how harsh Koreans are, right? Even when they troll vote and vote in a mind-biased way, he still put Ninja as all LCS second team. Ooh, wow, they really are harsh in Korea. Anyway, back to the serious shit. Hermit, coach of NRG, voted for Ray as the first top laner. And here's the problem. His is like Meteos. There's too many weird ones here that I can't believe that they're all legit picks. So, okay, maybe he thought Ray was the first top. Like I said, there's criteria where maybe you could say that. But he then voted Zig as the third best top. He voted Stixay, CLG AD carry, as the number 1 AD carry. He voted Mash as the second best AD carry. And he voted Doublelift only the third best AD carry. Does this guy just hate Doublelift or something? What's going on here? What's the scenario where he has 2 outside picks, Mash especially, as top 2 players in the league? What the fuck is going on here? Do these people care about this award and what it's supposed to mean? Or are they voting for friends of theirs? Now, Zix, coach of CLG, oh, surely not Zix. Nah, don't worry, he only voted for Stixay, his own player, the AD carry, not even the best player on CLG, as the best AD carry in LCS over Doublelift, his former player, who there was all the tension with and all the rest of it. Now, is that totally legit, is it? I'd love to see the reasons as to why that was. Now, at least in this case, I'll give him credit, he probably used some fuckery, like he did his job for the team or something, which again is not how this award is supposed to be voted, or at least how I think it should be voted, but at least I'll give him a slight out on that one. Still voting for his own player, of course. Path, coach of TSM, voted for every single TSM member as first team LCS. He doesn't give credit to anyone else in the league as they even had a chance to be the best. It's all about his players. He had the 5 best players. Guess the coaches for TSM must have done fuck all, right? Dylan Falco, coach of Immortals, voted for Pobelter and Adrian as first team All-LCS at mid lane and support. Now, interesting enough, the Adrian one, whatever, we can debate that later. The Pobelter one, so he thinks Pobelter was better than Bjergsen in isolation as a mid laner this split. I'd love to see the reasons as to why that his own player got to be that way. That sounds like bullshit to me and shows why you shouldn't be allowed to vote for your own players. Sean's Vitality coach put all of his players, who finished, by the way, as a team, 7th place in EULCS. He put all 5 players as first team All-LCS. Absolute mockery of this award, but gets worse in Europe, because Lozark, coach of Giants, put all of Giants as first team LCS. Sheepy, coach of Unicorns of Love, put all of Unicorns of Love as first team. And also, himself, not only put all his own players there, he also disrespected people by not putting Trick or Perks. Remember, Vizicachi did the same thing for Unicorns of Love as the players. They must just hate the G2 players, or are just assholes. He didn't put Trick or Perks as top 3 at their roles. Denied them again. Denied a player like Trick, even a top 3 position, and put his own fucking dogshit players in there. Yamato Cannon, Splice coach, voted for all of Splice as first place LCS. Now, here's what's interesting. That's mad bias from some of those coaches. But consider this for both LCS. All LCS coaches in NA, with the exception of Hermit, who did his own weird votes elsewhere, voted for at least one of their own players in one of the 3 teams. Every single one, all 10, think that they had a player who was top 3 in his role. All except one EU coach voted for at least one of their players in one of the 3. Think that all 10 EU think that one of their players at least is top 3 at their role. The only one for EU was Aranea, Origin coach, at least listed as that representative, who I'll give credit to is a knowledgeable guy and was a very fair guy and gave reasonable votes as to who he thought were the best. So as a result, let's just cull some of the worst offenders here. Even though they're representing, in the case of the players, and they can claim, as Adewamne said, he said he would have voted different individually if this had been an award like that, but he was forced to as a representative. Whether that's true or not, who knows. I'm going to say I'll call the worst offenders here, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a list here. Odoamne of H2K Visit chat sheet of Unicorns of Love, Sean's coach of Vitality, Miracle, coach of Envious, Meteos, jungler of Cloud9, Sheepy, coach of Unicorns of Love, Yamato Cannon, coach of Splice, Lozark, coach of Giants, should never again be allowed to vote in an All-LCS Awards. Personally, I don't think players should be anyway, but they should never be allowed to vote again on the basis of how they abused this voting system and absolutely flaunted. No, notice I let people like Hermit off. Maybe they just had weird ones. Zix off. Those weren't as egregious as these ones here. These people have shown they cannot be trusted and have actively abused the process and basically ruined what otherwise is a fantastic concept to recognize and award the best players of the split. These people have made a fucking mockery of it and treated it like a joke. So, is Riot okay with people like these making a joke out of the fucking award, making a mockery of it, voting in a stupid manner, purposely discrediting others? First of all, it's Riot who has to take the blame for this, by the way. Yes, these players abuse their trust, but the players should never be allowed to do it themselves. This is a classic example of how incompetent Riot is, because this isn't something that's like a new concept. Oh, I've just invented how you can make it fair. Just don't let players vote for themselves or their teammates. That's so famous across so many sports and so many like player voted MVP scenarios that it's not even something new. And yet they're acting like, oh, well, we've never heard of this. We thought we could just trust everyone to vote for whoever the real best is. Oh, what's that? They've all just voted for themselves and all their mates and fucked with people they don't like. I never could have foreseen this coming. Well, then you're incompetent. Even at the planning stage, you were incompetent. You could have come to me then, I'd have told you you're fucking incompetent, and I'd have done a fucking Glenn Geiger and us. I'd have been like, I want to know who your uncle is, because I'm going to have your fucking job, asshole. That's how it feels when this sort of shit happens. Because I care about the actual recognition of people throughout history, and that the history's legacy and record isn't tainted by bullshit like this, where people are just fucking around and don't care about the history, don't care about the integrity of the game, actually. Now then, let's look at this. Let me see. A key point I want to make here, this is a really important point I want to make here, is that say whatever you will about players, say whatever you will about coaches, all the rest of it. They're all supposed to be the experts about the game, the coaches who coach the game, players do everything, the play-by-play casters, well, they're not actually, but whatever, idiots would think because they watch the game, the colour commentators. These guys know the most about the game, right? The stupid bloody media who just twist everything and it's all clickbait and all, like all you fucks say. Guess what? Go and look at these ballots. I'll link below, by the way, where all the ballots were released. Go and look at the ballots of the media in Europe and NA, and you'll see how reasonable, in compared to those other groups who are supposed to be experts, these plebs in the media, and I think some of them are plebs, some of them are reasonable, you'll see how reasonable across the board the media's was. And you know what? Any that were unreasonable, I bet you I can ask those guys, and they'll give me a full reason why, and maybe even say it publicly. That's the difference right there. That's accountability. They did it reasonably. In general, they didn't vote for their friends. They didn't vote as assholes and troll and make a joke out of it. At least they understood the premise that this was an important award because it's about recognizing the best players. It's about acknowledging them. It's about putting this mark into history so you can go back and you can see who the best players were, and then you can go and look at these guys' careers and assess them reasonably. You don't go back and then look and see, oh, I guess just all of fucking Vitality were the best this split, right, Sean's, even though they finished fucking 7th place. You had all the best players, right? Guess you must be the shittest coach in the century, according to your logic. Totally unacceptable. So, despite a lot of troll voting, I also want to say one other point. Even though EU had the most, mass troll voting, there's some terrible voting in NA as well, still, for the second split running, EU had overall the most reasonable consensus of different roles from different teams, as I pointed out, not just all from the best team. It wasn't just all G2 players, it wasn't just all Splice players. Different roles actually getting to be the best, even if they're on the 3rd or 4th best team, as should be the case. And that was the case last split as well. Last split was a nightmare in NA. This split's another nightmare in NA. Now, it wasn't the case in the past. Summer split 2015, it was a joke where they just gave everything to Fnatic. So I want to credit EU for at least moving forwards in that way and being more reasonable. And I want to credit the media most of all for having the most reasonable votes. And fuck all those players and fuck all those coaches who treated this like a piece of shit, like it was totally worthless, and like it was a joke to them. You're a joke to us, and you should never be involved in this sort of voting again. And shame on Riot for even allowing those people to. Get your fucking shit together. How incompetent are you that you don't even understand how this works? And you haven't even looked at the other models, and that you're letting fucking clowns just vote for like Fabi as the best AD carry and Forgiven as the second best AD carry along with another AD carry from their team, and putting double a third just to fuck with him because they don't like him, and putting their own team entirely in there because they're the coach of the team, and coaches as well who are fucking mature adults. Fuck you as well.